from the British Retail Consortium Crime Report in 2024, they showed 475,000 incidents of violence and abuse between 2022 and 2023.
That's insane.
Hello, welcome to the
Security Breakdown, which you forget
every time.
I
forget every time.
Yeah.
I'm Jack. This is Matt.
Thank you. I am Matt.
You're welcome. Today we're talking about the unseen victims of retail crime. So we want to talk about, theft, shoplifting, things like that. But I think actually the most important part of the issue isn't, the cost of theft. There's huge amounts of shops that are being stolen from. But every single one of those shops has got somebody that works in it. And I think there's a lot of missing conversation around the people that are impacted by the crimes that happen.
Yeah, it seems to be. It seems to me that it's gone completely crazy the last 2 years, and everyone you talk to is saying exactly the same thing. That it's gone. It's almost like a switch was flipped, and it's all you seem to see reported, talked about, and for the right reasons. It's got to be talked about, but it just seems to be like an onslaught, and that's the thing that. We've been talking about. It's missing the fact that there's human beings at the end of those problems, like the violence and the abuse that's been targeted at shop workers, retail workers. Yes, there's a conversation going on. There's it's recently been made a standalone crime to assault. Is it assault?
Assault.
Yeah. We were asking ourselves, what is assault? And that is the use of force or violence, or the threat of the use of force or violence, because that's got an impact as well.
Saying to somebody, I'm going to do you in. Technically, that's assault because it's a threat.
If it's a credible threat, yeah.
So if somebody walks into a shop with a knife, they don't actually have to stab you. They can just say that they're going to stab you for them to be in that bracket of assault. I think to start with, I just want to frame the volume of crime that we're talking about. So from the British Retail Consortium Crime Report in 2024, they showed 475,000 incidents of violence and abuse between 2022 and 2023.
That's insane. And that was 2 years ago.
So, from 22
year before
to
last, basically.
Yeah. So that works out at 1,300 incidents a day.
Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, there's a lot of shops.
Yeah.
But that's an unreal number of crimes.
We were looking at the Association of Convenience Stores report today, and there's 485,000 businesses that are in the class convenience store.
Yep.
So you could say every single one of them potentially has had a violent incident in the space of a year.
Yeah, effectively, the number's the same. Obviously, that's just convenience stores, so it doesn't count,
other types of retailers,
Other retailers are available. But I do have a statistic for that as well.
Go for it, Stato.
An estimate of approximately 10% of all premises in the retail sector experienced at least one incident of assault or a threat of assault. So 1 in 10 shops in the entire country, in the UK, have had at least one threat or actual violence.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
It is.
And just think about a normal high street. How many, even in our small local towns, there might be sort of 30, 40, 50 shops. That's, 3 or 4 or 5 shops potentially getting crimes constantly.
And I think that's where you start thinking about the impact on the person that suffers the attack, and you start thinking about the types of people that those would be. And because we were interested in this and we've been looking into it, we've learned lots of things, like 65% of convenience store workers. So I've read a report by this Association of Convenience Stores. So a lot of this is from that. There was another one that I read, which was the Retail Trust, which is more broader types of retail. But in the Association of Convenience Stores, 65% of the staff are female. 65% of them are between the ages of 19 to 44, I think it was. But I would imagine it's weighted heavily towards the younger end of the scale.
Yeah.
So we're talking about young female staff that are being attacked, abused, whatever in store. And then what's the ongoing impact of that to retail as an industry? Because, if you're suffering abuse in your place of work, you're not going to want to stay there.
You ain't going to want to work there.
No.
I
mean, you abuse me. I shouldn't joke, but...
It's not technically abuse unless there's a credible threat, and there's no credible threat.
All right, fine.
Because I'd get sacked.
Well.
But yeah, you're absolutely right. So I probably worked maybe about a year in the retail industry 10 years ago. And even then, there was always a feeling of like retail is the worst place to work, right? Like you don't want to work in retail because you're stuck dealing with people.
Yeah.
And dealing with people that aren't necessarily
on
very
your side.
Nice,
right?
And probably angry half the time because they're stuck dealing with other people. I do actually have a story about a retail crime incident.
Oh, yeah?
A theft. So I worked in a second-hand electronics shop, and we had a sort of row of tills along one side of the shop, and then to the right of that there was a bit that we couldn't see into. And on that wall was a television. It wasn't a for sale item. It was a part of the shop display. And I remember it so vividly because it was insane. When it happened, it was ludicrous. What happened is that 3 or 4 people came in. A couple of them started up, shopping conversations with staff to keep everybody distracted, right? And then the third one walked around the back, ripped the television off the wall.
What?
Forcibly ripped the television off the wall, put it under his arm and walked out the door.
Brazen. And this was what?
Yeah.
10 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, I'd have thought so, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we all know it's not a new phenomenon, things going wrong in retail environments. But like we were saying, the last 2 years, it just seems to be crazy.
It's
the
huge increase.
And again, some of the stuff that we've learned on this journey of looking into it, researching, ready to talk about it, basically. A lot of the staff, so 65% of people that work in, this again is convenience stores, they work less than 1/4 of a mile from their place, from where they live.
Yeah.
And 17% less than 100 yards from where they live.
So, I mean, you think of
it's their house.
In a city, you might be living in an apartment above the shop that you're working in.
Or post office, postmasters, they frequently live on site.
It could be your house.
It could be your house, yeah. Certainly your community. So the vast majority of people are living and working within yards of the same places and then being attacked there, abused, whatever.
So they might, for instance, seeing a situation where they spot a criminal in the shop and they try to do something about it. They say, hey, you're going to pay for that? That criminal then takes that negatively, obviously.
Some sort of reprisal.
Yeah, if there's a reprisal... it's not like they've got to follow him on a bus home or follow him in a taxi. They just wait for them to walk out the door.
You hear these stories all the time about something happening, an incident happening, and then the member of staff, the team member, not wanting to go home at night, or certainly not alone anyway, wanting to be accompanied. And that, there's the mental health impact of what's it doing to people. Yeah. And you can see really easily why... all of a sudden, people will want to exit the industry, want to exit retail altogether, and there's a huge amount. According to the well-being report by the Retail Trust, a lot of people want to exit the industry, and that's a problem because the industry, it needs people in there working well and helping us all. And this is the sort of thing we were talking about that I guess from a criminal perspective, often they'll think, it's a victimless crime if I shoplift or whatever.
Yeah, it's a big faceless corporation,
Yeah.
They've got 1,000 shops. They're not going to care if I steal 50 quid from them.
Yeah.
But that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about the 18-year-old girl that's just finished school. She's probably like going to college, or maybe she's about to go to university in a couple of weeks. She's just getting a bit of pocket money. Mm-hmm. Suddenly she sees something happening in the shop. Maybe she thinks she could do something about it. Suddenly she's getting followed home from work. That's not.
It's terrifying.
It's not going to be positive for anybody.
No.
So yeah, the big shops might be a Faces corporation, but they're not Faces because there's people with faces that work in those shops, and I think that's what we're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think some of the good things, though, some of the positive things are that a lot of people we talk to in our world, so loss prevention managers, and typically these would be in the bigger organisations, are very focused on colleague well-being, and the colleague is always top of the list in terms of safety, security, everything else. And that is good. And a lot of organisations we see have put in place really, really great systems, really great measures to look after their team members. And not try and stop incidents from happening, but there's got to be an acceptance that you can't stop every single incident going.
Yeah.
So then what do you do after an event's happened? How do you support people afterwards? How do you get your managers upskilled because of the mental impact on the team member so that they've got to deal with that? And a lot of managers, I think, are without the right training, they would be afraid or wouldn't know how to handle the mental impact of an assault on somebody.
Yeah, there's almost a mindset of like, what if I make it worse?
Yeah.
If I don't say anything,
I don't know what I'm doing.
Hands off of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is kind of where you want to lead into is that if we need to look after the victims, we need to provide tools for not just the victims to be able to deal with what's happening to them, but tools for the people around them to be able to support them.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of statistics in that report, the Health of Retail report. 75% of retailers say that well-being's high on their agenda for the CEOs.
Which is positive.
Right?
That's
Which
good.
is really good because that means that 3/4 of all...
It's being talked about. There is a conversation.
Yeah. But 54% of managers feel they're unequipped to deal with mental health issues.
So there's a long way to go.
So we've got a good intention that's not being fulfilled.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think this is kind of where you're going. We've been talking about this because of what we do. We see lots and lots of different types of customers. It's not just retail. There's like cash in transit, and there's secure site, all sorts of things that we get involved in, and we see all manner of risk. But we talk to lots of people, and we see lots of good things happening with a common theme. But I think there's room to join up and collaborate.
To unify.
To come up with like a common practice way of working and aim for like a gold standard that goes across. Everyone that can tries to buy into and sign into. And I'll tell you why it's become a bit of a hobby horse of mine, this.
That's the second time you said that today.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
About two different things.
Well,
I have
multiple hobby horses.
You have a wide stable of hobby horses.
Broad interest of hobby horses. But anyway, I remember when I was first joining the business, and one of my bosses at the time had been out to do a demonstration at a petrol filling station. And while he was there was an armed raid.
Wow.
And he'd set up
What are the chances?
I guess he was there because it was a high-risk site, and he happened to be there, and it proved that it was a high-risk site. So he'd set up the fog generator, and he was recounting this afterwards. And he was there on behalf of an intruder alarm company, so he was supporting them. And 5 guys with machetes came and attacked the site. And the intruder alarm sales guy saw it happening and pushed my boss out the back door. Get out, get out, get out. There's a raid happening. He said in retrospect he wished he'd hit the fog button, but he didn't.
That's what I was hoping for.
But he was pushed out, and he was stood out the back like, in a bit of confusion. What do I do now, sort of thing. And then he thought, wait a minute, where are the staff? And the staff were still inside, and they were all female. So exactly what we've been talking about. And he sort of crisis conscience and went, I can't leave them. I've got to go back in. And he went back in, and he said, what I saw was incredible. One of the members of staff was facing down these 5 armed men. I mean, this would not be something that's advisable, and I'm not suggesting it is a good idea. But she was facing them down and saying, no, you're having nothing out of me. Go on, get out of it. You buggers, effectively.
Brilliant.
And to his astonishment, they did. They left. They realised they weren't getting anything out of this person, and they went. And he went, my boss was clearly quite shaken by all of this, but he went over to see, was this member of staff okay? And he said, that was amazing. How were you so able to deal with that? She said, it's the 5th time it's happened this month. And this is going back 20 odd years ago. Do you know what I mean?
I think that's something we experience a lot anyway, and especially with fog, is that actually demonstrating any kind of obstacle to a criminal.
Yeah, they don't really want confrontation. But what happens if there's a reprisal? And this is where I'm getting to, that we see so many organisations, we've been talking to some of them, some of you may even be listening, who've got great systems in place that really are putting the effort into looking at their training, then reviewing the training, what is in place to then support people, things like that. But it's all kind of all over the place. Not all over the place, but everyone's doing slightly different things. Good things, but slightly differently.
Yeah. I mean, imagine a world where if you're a retail worker, say you work at a supermarket, right? And you've received this training and you've been, a part of that and you've got that as in your wheelhouse. And then you move to a different place.
And it's different.
One of 2 things one of 3 things, I guess, is going to happen.
Better or
it's
worse.
It's going to be different.
Yeah.
But still exist, which is good enough because you've already got a grounding and they might have some better things and maybe you can provide some of your own insight as well. It's going to not exist, which is infinitely worse because it's not unified and some places haven't bothered. Or it's the same and you're immediately in a comfort zone where you know that you can already trust.
You can already operate it. Yeah, you know what to do. Yeah. Exactly that. And I think it's not just retailers that could benefit from being involved in the creation of this kind of unified way of doing things. It's the supply chain's got to be involved as well, and the responding authorities. Frequently you hear, the police don't respond to this type of attack, or the police don't do enough, or da-da-da-da-da. But while we were talking about it, it's fairly obvious that there's certain things that either can't be done, or there are certain things that can be done differently to get different results when working with crime and the response to crime.
I'm guessing there's if you report a crime, and one of the statistics I read through is that quite a lot of crime, like theft crime, doesn't get reported at all because it's not bad enough.
Yeah.
Right? Then it doesn't seem, they don't think it's worth calling the police over. So there's obviously, if everyone has the training where they can understand, like, yes, this is a crime that's taking place and yes, the police should be involved, that then means that more crimes can get looked after. But actually,
it heightens awareness in the people that need to create the responses.
Yeah.
So, for instance, there's the changing of or the creation of a standalone offence for abuse of retail staff, which is a very positive thing because there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is it was already a crime to abuse them and needs to be prosecuted. No one's saying that that's not the case. What they're saying is by creating a standalone crime, you can more accurately gather the scale of the problem and then mount the right responses. So that's pretty good. But the other thing is as well, there's a bit about the use of language when, so like you were saying, either not reporting, it's got to be reported really, or the way in which it's reported. So imagine you're a police control room commander and you're prioritising resources to respond to multiple concurrent incidents. So I don't know if you ever watch the ambulance programme where they're trying to coordinate where the ambulances get sent to and how they categorise where it goes. It's fascinating stuff. Similarly, there's a control room with the police that have got to do the same sort of thing. So imagine you've got a number of domestic abuse call-ins where somebody there's a threat to their life and well-being. And then you get a call for a shoplifting incident. And
the shoplifting incident, they call and go, yeah, somebody's just been here and had 6 bottles of wine off the shelf.
Which one do you prioritise?
You're not going to prioritise
You're going to send it to the domestic abuse case, aren't you? But, unless, for instance, so I don't know how many people listening will have heard of steam-in gangs, but they are incredibly rapid, incredibly intense and violent shoplifting incidents. A team of 5 or 6 massive blokes will storm a store, rip the displays out while it's trading, and they'll be abusive, violent, trying to establish control because they don't want any confrontation.
Potentially armed as well.
And it's traumatizing. So rather than say we've just had an incident where someone's stolen some stuff, imagine if the call-in was, we have literally just been violently robbed. I am a lone female shop worker and I am traumatized. They've literally just left.
Yep.
It would generate a totally different reaction.
Yeah.
You'd
And
thought.
that's the training thing.
Exactly.
You can
that's
train
where getting that
somebody
standardized kind of response.
Yeah, to be able to communicate effectively with
Yeah.
the 911, a 911, a 999 call.
999. Yeah.
If you can communicate effectively with them, they can better understand your situation,
Yeah.
better
prioritise,
prioritize,
exactly.
and provide a better service.
Yeah.
You know, information is only as good as, service is only as good as the information that you put in the first place. You get out what you get in.
So this is where we've got to thinking, isn't it? It's got to be a collaborative approach. It's not. Somebody asked me, what's in it for suppliers to be involved in this kind of activity? It's like,
I think that might be the most obvious answer ever.
oh yeah,
Well, if staff are more effectively trained to deal with crime, right, then in theory, shoplifters would be more deterred because staff can deal with the problem in the first place. And if shoplifters are deterred, that means that shoplifting doesn't take place, which means that product doesn't get taken.
no, I'm talking about sorry, I probably wasn't clear. I'm talking about like the security industry suppliers to be involved in creating the standards.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, all right. Not the shop suppliers.
Not the shops. Well, technically they are shop suppliers, but not of the retail items themselves. So, why would suppliers want to be involved? Well, there's a human aspect to this as well. Although we sell things as part of our business and we're part of a multitude that makes up the industry, and we're all humans, and nobody wants to see any of this going on. But beyond that, we've got vast experience across multiple different risk streams, if you like. It's not just retail. So there's a lot we can add to the conversation as well. And this is where we think it's got to be I think it's got to be a collaborative approach with retailers working with the supply chain, working with, and not the supply chain to provide solutions, it's to provide input, working with the response authorities so that there's that common approach and we all understand each other's worlds and go, right, these are the things that need to be thought about. And what we're talking about now, the victims of crime, I think it's one part of the conversation that's kind of being missed at the moment. It is starting to be talked about.
Yep.
I'll be talking about it on a panel discussion at Retail Risk on October the 3rd. Other exhibitions exist or whatever it is you meant to say. Not on October the 3rd with me speaking on the panel,
Exactly.
but we think it's a really important topic to try and flag up and try and get people engaged and talking about. I do think there's a fantastic bit of work that can be done around that.
Yeah, I agree.
Excellent. I'm glad you agree.
I think retail crime is such an enormous and prevalent thing that I think it infects every level of our society.
Yeah, what we were saying earlier, it's an everyone problem.
Yeah, like everybody has to go to the shops.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to go down the corner shop and get, a couple of beers and a hot dog or whatever. Nobody is living in a world where they aren't doing that, right? So it affects everyone.
Yeah.
Whether it doesn't affect you today and it might not affect you in 10 years' time, you might walk around the corner next week and be in the middle of a shop when a steaming gang comes in, right? Maybe that's selling by fear. I'm not selling anything, so it's just fear.
No, I think you're going down a good path. There was some of the things that really make this stand out. Some of the stats, which can be a bit dry sometimes, but when you consider some of the things that we're reading in these reports that are on our laptops in front of us, something like 25% of all the convenience stores have a family member that works within the business, So potentially it's family members getting attacked. Like we already said, it's definitely people that are living and working in their own communities.
Yeah.
So it could be your neighbour, it could be your sister, it could be your mum, your dad, whatever. And it's not just an everyone problem from that perspective. It's also that thing I was trying to lead into a bit ago about it. Maybe there's a perception within big corporations that it's a victimless crime by the people perpetrating the crime. It's not. It's not a victimless crime, even if nobody's abused or whatever. The loss still occurs, and that loss can only translate into increased prices that affects all of us,
Now, this is my hobby horse, where to me, my perception is that if more crime takes place, right, then the cost of that crime has to be recouped by the shops,
Yeah, has to.
which means that the things cost more, which means that more people can't afford them. So I imagine it as like a red line that as that cost of everything goes up, the cost of living, right? And apparently we're in a cost of living crisis. And looking at these statistics, I can kind of see a bit of why. But as the line goes up, more people fall below that line. More people can't afford the basic human essentials. So more people turn to crime as a last resort.
People who maybe would never otherwise have.
Exactly.
They might be driven to desperation, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you get to when a person gets to a point where they're in like a survival fight for their life kind of situation, they can be kind of unpredictable and dangerous.
Yeah.
Like we're animals and being cornered is not necessarily going to work out well for everybody, right? So although I'm not saying that every single person eventually drops below this line and then suddenly turns to violent crime, it's a slippery slope.
It heightens
isn't
the
it?
risk,
And
essentially.
if you're not above the line, you're below the line.
Yeah.
And
So retail crime, in a way, is, without sounding too dramatic, is potentially unpicking the very fabric of society and forcing people into a worse and worse situation.
exactly, yeah. And it's one of the things that's killing the high street. You know, people go to online retailers not because it's always cheaper. Sometimes they go to online retailers because they're not going to get attacked. Maybe that's
Maybe.
so. Maybe resolving some of the problems with retail crime makes high streets feel safer, which means that more people
People
can come
go
out,
there
so
and
more
shop.
people spend their money.
Yeah, this
and
is it,
places
isn't it?
can come back to life again.
It's almost like that's why everyone's got to be involved in
Exactly.
trying to tackle this,
Yeah.
and it's not just singularly government's problem. It's not just singularly the retailers. It's not just the suppliers that have got to try and solve it. It's not just the police to respond to. It's everybody.
Yeah,
Wow, I said that all in one breath.
good job. Well
Thank you
done.
very much.
And on that enlightening and invigorating note,
Yeah.
thank you very much for watching or listening. Matt, as you said, you're going to be speaking on a panel at Retail Risk.
I
So
am.
if you're going to be at Retail Risk in October in Leicester,
Come and listen. Come and give us your
really
views. Come and tell me what you think of what we say. Get involved, I think, is what
Yeah.
we're trying to put out there.
and if you think that I'm wrong, well, you're wrong.
Anyway,
That's it.
until next time.
Bye.
Bye.